Okay. We are, we haven't got to agenda item 1 yet. We have to start the budget hearing, but we're at the, we're going to make a quick change and plow ahead to item 2 and get that taken care of real quick. It's a proclamation that will be presented here inside the chambers. And are you doing that, Pat? Michael Ryan.
Who's gonna do it?
Well, Chair, County Council, my name is Michael Ryan. I'm your Director of Community Information. I'm here tonight to present item number 2, which is a proclamation for Richard Hagstrom Fernery's Day. Excuse me.
I want to thank the council for taking a few minutes of your very important time to take care of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You'll never make a politician with speeches that short.
I don't even plan on it.
I've known you for several decades, having been a part of the fern industry, and I appreciate and admire the work that you and your family have done in that industry.
Do I come down, or you want me to just stand here? Okay, Mr. Hagstrom, I don't think I've ever been formally introduced to you. You may know my dad, Don Dempsey Sr. He's represented a lot of fern grower as an accountant, and we've had ferneries when I was younger, and I remember going out at night freeze protecting and all the stuff that goes with it, being a fern grower. And you've always been kind of the bar as far as ferneries go. There's a couple of families that are known, obviously, as being the gorillas of the fern industry, and you're one of them, and you've always done a good job. So it really is an honor for me to read this and present it to you. And this is signed by all the council members, and it states, whereas the agricultural industry is the silent engine of Volusia County economy that creates jobs, feeds families, and generates more than $780 million in local economic activity. And whereas Florida Farm Bureau's County Alliance for Responsible Environmental Stewardship CARES program recognizes farmers and ranchers who demonstrate exemplary efforts to protect Florida's natural resources. And whereas Richard Hagstrom, a fourth-generation farmer and owner of Richard Hagstrom Ferneries in Pearson, has been recognized with the CARES Award for implementing conservation practices that improve water quality and reduce water and nutrient use. And whereas the CARES Award recognition demonstrates that our local agricultural producers are fully committed to protecting Florida's environment. And whereas the Volusia County Council recognizes the efforts of Mr. Hagstrom, who answers the call to protect our environment while also producing safe, affordable, and abundant agricultural products. Now, therefore, we, the County Council of Volusia County, Florida, do hereby proclaim September 19th, 2023 as Richard Hagstrom Ferneries Day in Volusia County, and urge all residents to recognize Richard Hagstrom Ferneries and celebrate the achievements of this farm that protects our natural resources and produces an abundance of agricultural products that strengthen and enrich our community and our nation. Thank you, sir.
Okay, County Council, step that way. Yeah, you guys have step that way too. Okay, that's nice. Everybody's centered. Okay, ready? One more. Very good. Thanks.
Take care, Mr. Hagstrom. It's good to see you. Thank you so much. Thanks. See you, Steve. Thanks, brother. Thank you. Oh, Dawn, come on.
Council, with your permission, since there's a lot of people here for this, let's, I would prefer to move into item 7, the budget. Anybody
Mr.
opposed?
Mr. Brower, I believe you would need a motion and vote for the proclamation.
Oh, yes.
You want to make it, Don?
Do we have a motion to accept the proclamation?
I move to accept it.
Second.
Motion by Don Dempsey, second by Troy Kent. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Chairman, motion to move the budget millage item up to right now.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Troy Kent, second by Matt Reinhardt. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we will begin with item 7.
Okay, Mr. Chair and Honorable Council, I'll kick it off here. As we had done in the first hearing, today we'll go over the purpose, what's required by Florida Statute 200.065, that we discuss the millage rates and their percentage increase over rollback where applicable, and explain the reasons for the proposed increase over rollback. This also gives the public the opportunity to speak and ask questions. We will have to adopt the final millage for fiscal year 2023-24, and we also will ask you to adopt the recommended budget for 23-24. So with that, I'll just go over quickly again. For those of you who maybe were not at the last meeting or new here, the budget process to date. We started this process actually back in January. We went through every major service area through the county and presented those levels to council to receive direction for any operational changes and potential. We went over the potential increases, the issues that were facing us with salaries and retention, and eventually we got into increases that were being passed down by the state. We also went over the capital plan and the 5-year forecast, because again, we do not budget 1 year at a time. We need to look at these things over many years so that we can project with things that we know are coming in the future and how we will handle those items. So that gives a good look both short-term and long-term. We also recommended the budget that was there in the council in June and set the tentative rates. And of course, we went over the funding of the constitutional offices, which was presented on August 1st. Council provided input that they wanted to look at the communication service tax and also business receipts. We went ahead and had the special meeting in August to make the deadline, and council elected to eliminate the communication service tax, saving over $3 million that will not be paid by the residents of the unincorporated county. Council also, in discussions, led us to what we presented as a budget, which included rollback in the MSD and the library fund and the Ponce Inlet Port Authority and the Silver Sands Bethune MSD. So the team has worked to provide a budget that did that. Of course, we had the first public budget hearing back on September 5th. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Aaron Van Cleek, our budget director, and he'll go over what we've been doing since that time.
All right. Good evening, Council. Aaron Van Cleek. So changes since the first public hearing. You're going to approve this item, or you're going to discuss this item, I should say, a little later in the agenda. But the PEMT program for the public Medicaid managed care system, we had to increase the payment to the state for that program. So we did that in the general fund. It's $703,000 increase. It decreases the general fund reserves by the same amount. That increase in the payment to the state will net more than $1 million in increase, is estimated to net more than $1 million in revenue from the state once that comes back to us. So it is no change to the bottom line of the budget. It's just moving that expense. So we wanted to discuss that with you before we move forward. This is the same slide you saw at the last last public budget hearing. It does give you the 22-23 adopted millage rates by the different taxing funds, and then what the 23-24 rollback rate is, what the 23-24 tentative rates are that were set in July, and then the percent change from rollback. And then those are what we would read into record later in this meeting before the vote. This is a new one that we added in. You have actually seen this one before. It's also in our budget document. This is just kind of a millage rate history of the millage rates that have been set by council for the last 10 years. You can see a big focus on the general fund since 2017-18. We have been reducing the rate each year, with 2 of those years at a full rollback rate. We also have multiple funds. In 2021, all of our funds went to or below rollback. We are, as George mentioned, at the rollback rate in the library, Port Authority, MSD, and Silver Sands taxing funds this year. This kind of gives you a history of the general fund millage rate. Just a little add-on to that last slide to show you that the taxes that we have not levied, had the rate been left at the 6.1 in fiscal year 18. So based on the value change and the millage rates going down, that's $218 million in ad valorem taxes that have not been levied through those fiscal years.
And I'm just going to add that when I do talk to our counties around the state, we have steadily, and we'll show that in a minute, brought our rate down. And when many counties actually have held their rate for many years. A lot of places it's pretty uncommon to reduce the rate like we have done. So and you'll see that in a second when you look at where we stack up now across the state.
And just another addition on this is FY24, that is the combination rate of the general fund and the public safety fund for the law enforcement. That is the combined rate. So Florida Tax Watch rankings, we've talked about these before at prior meetings, where they come from. It's an independent, nonpartisan, nonprofit taxpayer research institute. We have validated the rankings in years past. Anybody can do it with the information from the Florida Department of Revenue. Highlighted Volusia County rankings. We are 57th out of 66 counties. Duval County is excluded from the rankings in this instance. So we're 57th out of the 67 counties in expenditures countywide. You see the statewide average there, and then what our expenditures are. And then in a per capita total county revenue, we are 55th out of 66 counties. And then our population, we rank 12th out of the 67. And this gives you a good look at the per capita property tax levies by the different entities, because not every, as you guys are well aware, not every entity on a tax bill is set by Volusia County Council. You have the school board, you have the cities, and you have independent districts. So everybody's tax bill has a little bit of a mix of different organizations that are levying the millage rates. So when you look at the per county government millage, what you guys set on an annual basis, we are ranked 38th out of the 67 counties for our millage rate. The statewide average is 784, and Volusia County is at 601. Our school district ranks 30th. Our municipalities rank 6th out of the 67 counties, and then the independent districts rank 18th. And then you see that little footnote on the bottom that gives you the per capita property tax levies. Statewide average is just over 2,000, whereas Volusia County, we are right there at 1,600. So then we get into the general fund and public safety millage. When we're talking about the millage rate, we had split this rate. It used to be everything for law enforcement was funded out of the general fund. Now we have what is the public safety millage that is going to fund county-wide law enforcement. There's still a piece of the sheriff's budget that is funded from the MSD because he is the patrol agency for the unincorporated area. And he also receives revenue from the cities for the contract for patrol services with the city of Deltona, city of DeBary, city of Oak Hill, and city of Pearson. And then he also receives money for the school board contract for any services he provides to the school board. So prior to this year, like I said, it was part of the general fund for county-wide law enforcement. This year, we are breaking it out. In future years, the public safety fund will have its own rollback rate. So that calculation will be presented at each year to you. So the fiscal year 22-23 general fund millage was 4.8499. And if you combine the two rates this year, we are at the same 4.8499 rate. This gives you a look at the ad valorem taxes at the combined rate, and then what the ad valorem taxes would be at the rollback rate. The additional $22.8 million in ad valorem tax revenue is dedicated to the expenses you see below. We did discuss those at the first public budget hearing. The increase in the countywide sheriff office funding is $11.2 million. You see the salary benefit for increases for unions and non-bargaining staff. A big piece of that being the retirement change that was put down on us by the Florida legislature when they changed the rates. And then inmate medical expense increase. You guys know about that contract. That was a $2.7 million, $2.8 million increase. Increases to the required CRA payments, supervisor of elections budget, commissions to the property appraiser and tax collector, property insurance cost, and utilities cost. The Volusia Forever and Echo comparison to the rollback rate, each of those programs would bring in an additional $962,894 in ad valorem tax revenue. Both programs are recommended at the maximum millage rate that was approved by the voters of Volusia County. And additional revenue for the Echo program will allow for more grant opportunities, while additional revenue for the Volusia Forever program will provide more funding for land purchases and land conservation management. In the mosquito control fund, you see the additional revenue between the rollback and the flat millage rate that's recommended is an additional $589,000. The additional revenue is what we consider needed to provide funding for the mosquito control facility. It is the entire complex out there that is in need of replacement, and so we have been setting aside money for that replacement. The project is going into the design phase. In fire rescue, we do have a comparison to the flat millage rate and the rollback rate. The additional $4.1 million in ad valorem revenue is needed to increase in personnel salary for the union contract, and the remainder of the additional revenue is dedicated to capital needs. Mainly Station 15 relocation is estimated at just over $15 million in FY24. This gives you a look at the budget and taxes by the taxing funds. So you can see in the general fund, we have a $324.3 million budget. However, only $179.6 million of that is from ad valorem revenue. And then I'm not going to read all those in an effort to save a little bit of time, but they're there for review. This gives us our countywide operating revenue, $1,194,011,655. Remember, we have a lot of enterprise operations within the county. We have the Ocean Center, we have the Daytona Beach International Airport, we have our own water utilities department, we have our parking garage, as probably missing one, but that's we have enterprise funds that bring in a big piece of this budget as well. So it is definitely not all ad valorem taxes when you're looking at that total. And in fact, you can see the ad valorem taxes are the right corner of the pie, the $358 million. You also have to add the CRA pass-through. That's at the $11.2 million. That's just the money we bring in ad valorem taxes, and we send it right back out to the CRAs. This gives you your operating expenditures by category, which does tie to that same revenue number, and does give you a look at the different categories that we have. And then I'll pause here for any council comments or public participation.
Councilman Santiago.
Question for you. When you were talking about the separation of the public safety fund and the general fund, you used the words public safety fund and law enforcement interchangeably in your presentation. My question is, you're naming it on the tax sheet, I forgot what it's called, Public Safety Fund. Is that a statutory naming mechanism?
So the name of the fund, the name of the statute, or the statute that allowed us to do this, is called a fine and forfeiture fund. Fine and forfeiture sounds really confusing when you put that on a trim notice. So in discussions with the property appraiser to try to be more clear on what it is, Public Safety Fund was what we landed on, and that's what the property appraiser wanted to move forward with. Management agreed with that it would be more clear on what it is. If somebody saw fine and forfeiture on their trim notice, I don't know that they would understand exactly what that is.
Would it be more clear if it said law enforcement fund? Because public safety fund can be interchangeable with our fire and EMS. I mean, I think if you ask the average citizen, what is public safety? They're gonna name all three of those, EMS, fire, and law enforcement. Unless we're statutorily obligated to name it that way, I would prefer that it would read law enforcement fund or something along those lines for clear transparency purposes.
We can discuss that.
For future years.
Yeah, for future years. I mean, the trim notices have already gone
Yeah,
out.
this was decided back in, I think in December, but we'll get the exact time. But that could be worked out in future years.
And ultimately, while management agreed, it is up to the property appraiser what the name of the fund was on the trim notice.
Is that statutorily?
The statutory name is fine and forfeiture. We agreed with the property appraiser when
Okay.
he recommended to change it to the public safety fund.
Okay, so, I mean, I thought I seen heads bobbing on the county council saying that we have a preference. I get it, it's been printed. Maybe for next year, we can have that. So for clear transparency purpose, people know where their money's going. Thank you,
I
Mr.
think
Chair.
everybody agrees it's a good idea. You don't need a motion for that. You just said you would, or would you prefer a motion?
Well, I think we do need a motion to approach him with that, make sure we're all
Yeah.
together as a body.
Mr. Chair, I move that advise staff to speak with property appraiser's office to change the naming mechanism of the public safety fund for the following tax year to say law enforcement fund.
Second.
Okay, motion by David Santiago, second by Matt Reinhardt, and the motion is to change the name from public safety to law enforcement, which would be much clearer to everybody paying their tax bill. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, I'm done.
Any other questions? I don't see any questions if you want to proceed.
Public participation.
You want to include the public?
I feel like I kind of have to.
Well, and statutorily he has to, so.
Okay. When I call your name, I might, we have 11. I'll call your name and then I'll call a backup. If you just want to come down here to the bullpen, the backup, come up here. Please make sure the microphone is near your mouth so we can hear you, and you will have 3 minutes to tell us what you would like us to know. David Hartgrove is first.
Hi there. David Hartgrove, Daytona Beach, Florida, representing Halifax River Audubon. I'm here to speak in opposition to any rollback of the millage rate for Volusia Forever and Echo. Both of these initiatives were reauthorized in 2020 by overwhelming majorities of the voters in Volusia County. None of us is asking you to protect us from ourselves. We knew what we were voting for. And to support these initiatives, we knew we were passing taxes to do that. It's only talking about roughly $5 a month. So please do not vote to roll back the millage rate for either Volusia Forever or Echo. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have John Nicholson, followed by Sarah Lee Morrissey.
John Nicholson, Daytona Beach side. First of all, you know how I feel about rollback. I'm glad you guys didn't do rollback because it sneaks up on you. It did it with Daytona Beach, 27% increase in taxes. Nobody wants that. Secondly, Amick Fall and Pat Northey and I had this little argument for years about Daytona Beach being a donor city, and we are. We put more money in and get less out of the county than any other city. All right? So I'm asking you during the year to look at what is given from ECHO and Volusia Forever to the different cities, how much they contribute, and how much they take back. Because there was a gentleman on the dais we're not allowed to mention who says that the west side of the county doesn't get their fair share. So I'm asking, in order that we realize who gets what, because that $1 million a year for trails adds up. Daytona Beach really does not get $1 or $2 million a year out of ECHO. So we have to balance it and make sure that it's fair and equitable to everyone. And lastly, the public really has a right to see the documentation that comes up there. I know you guys have it in front of you in regular print, but when we look up there, I'm sorry, I know I'm older and I have glasses. I cannot make out those numbers. It's very, very difficult for me. So if we have a way of doing that so that they can be exposed a little bit larger for those that are senior citizens and visually impaired. Thank you.
Sarah Lee, followed by Melissa Lammers.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the council, Mr. Rechtenwald, Mr. Dyer, Ms. Conscian. My name is Sarah Lee Morrissey. I'm here tonight representing the League of Women Voters of Volusia County, and I am a board member of the League. The League supported Volusia ECHO and Volusia Forever in 2020, and I'd like to remind you to take the long view of this program. We're just in the early years of the second implementation. On my tax bill, the rollback doesn't even get me to $5. I cannot buy my husband his donuts and coffee at Dunkin' Donuts with what I would save on rollback. But what going to your .20 mills does for the programs is essential to keeping these programs viable and running the way that your citizens and the voters have come to expect the program to be run. The programs implement a large number of your goals, and it's wildly popular. 2020 was not an election in Volusia County that got challenged, and we have experience with challenged elections. But our election was not challenged, and with 75% of the voters in 2020 approving a full .20 mills, and I understand that it was a max, but the voters did overwhelmingly approve that. And that allows you to feel comfortable authorizing the full .20 mills, as well as knowing that you are being fiscally responsible in authorizing that full .20 mills to operate the program as it needs to be operated. I think if you look at the budget, particularly for Forever, you'll see that reserves are an important component. And in any given year, you may want to expend more funds than your annual revenue brings in. By continuing to keep yourself at least this early in the game at the .20, you're enabling yourself to move forward in the most fiscally responsible way, limit any reliance we may have in the future on debt, and keep us whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Melissa Lammers, followed by Pamela Novi.
Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. Melissa Lammers, Ormond by the Sea. Before I began my second career talking to the Volusia County Council about Volusia Forever, I ran publicly traded communications agencies. The businesses were not as large and complex as Volusia County, but I learned about budgeting, I learned about return on investment, and I learned about accountability to shareholders. We are all the shareholders of Volusia County, but we elected you to conduct business on our behalf effectively in the first place and hopefully efficiently too. We, more than 2/3 of us, voted for Volusia Forever. We voted to trust you, as we had trusted county councils for the prior 20 years, to invest 20 cents of every $1,000 of our taxable property values in protecting our drinking water supplies, in protecting the land around our springs, rivers, lakes, and lagoon from flood and from toxic runoff, and to ensure that we would have opportunities for passive recreation on real Florida lands. The late Walter Boardman said, paraphrasing him, "If you want to protect natural lands, then buy them." Considering the preemptive legislation that comes out of Tallahassee and cripples local governments a little bit more each year in terms of how they can manage growth, Mr. Boardman's advice seems correct. So I'm not sure why you've struggled so much to keep Volusia Forever intact. I suspect it has to do with how the budget's presented. For most program budgets, reserves are rainy day funds, a little bit of fat to see you through the lean times. But for Volusia Forever, the reserves are meat. The reserves are the working capital that Volusia Forever needs to protect land. The reauthorized Volusia Forever has only been rebuilding the fund since 2021, so the reserve isn't yet sufficient to buy the lands that you've already approved, let alone any lands in the pipeline. But as you know, we don't go it alone. Volusia Forever looks to funding partners to match our dollars. Over the past 36 years, we've gotten about 35 cents back for every dollar we've spent on land conservation. That's a great return on investment. Volusia Forever has to have money in hand to go to funding partners, and they have to have money to match our dollars, and right now they do. That's not always the case. So by trying to save a little bit of money now while partners are funded, you put at risk spending a whole lot more, or worse yet, missing acquisition opportunities altogether. That wouldn't be effective and it wouldn't be efficient. On the taxpayer relief side of things, and I do appreciate that you've looked at that, I did some numbers. I looked at a range of homes. Well, thank you very much. Please leave the millage as it is so that I can retire. Thank you.
Thank you. Pamela Novi, followed by Steve Wonderly.
Good evening. I'm here as a citizen. I voted yes to Volusia Forever and Echo. When 75.6% of the votes cast were cast for Volusia Forever, it was with the expectation that you would support it fully in order to carry out the voter mandate. The Volusia Forever campaign ran on the current millage rate. That means under $5 a month for the average home in Volusia County. I doubt many would think that's a reach for what we get in return. Protection of our drinking water supplies, protection of land around our springs, rivers, lakes, and lagoons, to aid in flood mitigation and preventing toxic chemicals from entering our waterways and wetlands, not to mention the natural beauty these properties preserve. With the current spree of clear cutting and overdevelopment, preservation is needed now more than ever. Tourists come for the natural beauty of Florida, not to see the same chainsaws, stores, and urban sprawl that they have at home. Please do not reduce the millage rate. It will take away from what Volusia Forever was intended to do. The voters overwhelmingly told you what they want. Please stand with us. Thank you.
Steve Wonderly, followed by Greg Bottom.
Good evening. I'm Steve Wonderly. I live in Daytona Beach, and I'm also here representing the Sierra Club. I'm also here to talk about Volusia Forever, and I will be brief. As you know, in 2020, voters overwhelmingly renewed Volusia Forever, partly as an investment in their future, and certainly with an eye to the protection of drinking water and the prevention of flooding that it affords. Volusia Forever does not currently have anywhere near the funds that it needs to achieve its purpose. To cut the funding for it now would be short-sighted and would cripple the program. So basically it comes to this. Please don't override the will of the people regarding this program that they support and that the county needs. Thank you.
Greg Bottom, and you will be followed by firefighter Jeremy Karaginas.
All right, thank you, Greg Bottom, Daytona Beach. I wasn't planning on speaking, but decided I was here and I would say a few words about keeping the millage rates the same. A little bit different approach for me is we're capped with 3%, right, 10% on others on your homes and things, and 3% cap. And when you hit with the millage rates, it doesn't seem like much. It seems like the people who are paying for this are the people that are moving here, that are pushing up our land prices, you know, generating all that stuff. So I didn't understand why it's really something that's up for debate or concern. I mean, you have a job to do to look at the budgets and things like that, but I would encourage you to keep the millage rate as at the 0.2. Thanks.
Jeremy Karaginas, followed by Eric West.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Chair. My name is Jeremy Karaginas, President of the Volusia County Firefighters Association, Local 3574. I'm here today to show my support to the manager, his team, and the budget as proposed. As a 19-year firefighter with this county, president of the largest fire union in this county, I've lived and seen how the general fund and the fire fund affects our public safety. The general fund supports public safety in many ways. It provides our equipment and staffing for our hazmat team, as well as our technical rescue team. The general fund and fire fund together supplement the EMS system, which has a shortage of ambulances, by providing our staff and our fire-based ambulances in the corners of the county, which has improved our service delivery. The general fund supports public safety and fire rescue by funding our fleet department, who keeps our fire trucks running, facilities, who fixes our aging fire stations, and our road and bridge, who clears the way. Not to mention our rockstar HR department, who helps us recruit and retain. Any additional rollback or cut to these departments could have an effect on our public safety, fire, and EMS, and that is why I support the manager and his budget as proposed. I just wanted to take this time to this council and say thank you. You have increased our staffing to 3 on every fire truck. You've approved and replacement and remodels of our aging fire stations, and you continue to improve to keep our county safe.
Eric West, followed by Dennis Baer.
I'm glad I don't have to follow him. My name is Eric West, Wilbur by the Sea, and I'd like to speak on the ECHO, the Volusia Forever and ECHO thing. When that was put on the ballot, to me, that was a contract between our government and us. It was not a contract between us and an insurance company, that we never expect them to actually do what they say they're going to do. To me, the whole point of representative government, the basis of it, is that we have you run the government because we can't vote on every traffic light and every raise, in return for which you have one fundamental requirement, and that is that every decision you make has to be to improve our safety. If you look around and look at all the fish that are dying, all the manatees that are dying, if you look around and you see all the pollution, we can't even go in our waterways without worrying about getting some sort of flesh-eating bacteria to kill us. Our environment is probably at the worst position it's ever been in the history of Florida. And there is no less expensive way to help solve that than to buy up wetlands, buy up forests, buy up land that has been cleared and reforest, because we went through this back in 1998. A single mature oak tree on a normal rainfall year will save you 15,000 gallons of stormwater treatment. Now imagine how many oak trees you could get on 100 acres. That's a lot of money. And it's free from that point on because it goes on forever. It's not something you have to replenish. Once you've got it, it's paying you back. And it's just crazy to think about reducing that money. I would like to see you put on the ballot next year an addendum saying, would you like to raise the millage rate another 1% for Volusia Forever and Echo? I'd like to see you increase that because you're going to spend billions trying to keep us from flooding. You're going to spend billions trying to keep enough water. We're going to have to go to desalination, but if we have forests and we have wetlands and we have these things, water is going to take longer to go away than if you have some sort of development that just sucks up 3,000 households worth of water, which we don't now have. We're under priority water caution restrictions, and that was in 1998. They said we didn't have enough water for the 1998 approved development and the people who were here then, that we would run out. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Bear, followed by Cynthia Qualwasser. You'll have to correct me when you get up here. Dennis.
Good evening, members of the council. Dennis Bear, I'm here as an individual. I reside in Ormond by the Sea. I've been involved with the Volusia Forever referenda going back to the 1980s. Clay Anderson, Reed Hughes, Walter Boardman, some names you've heard. And, you know, Volusia County really set both a state and national trend on the taxpayer saying, yes, we will tax ourselves to set aside environmentally sensitive lands for future generations, for water quality, for open space, and just overall quality of life. I've been fortunate that I've been able to serve on both the Flagler County and Volusia County Land Acquisition Committees, and I've seen the way that our local funds have been used to bring in matching funds from the state, and I've also seen how these programs have developed over the years, first off to make sure that the safeguards are in place. Proper analysis is done to make sure we get the right projects. Proper analysis is done to make sure we get the proper appraisals done. And then also what Volusia County set another trend in was making sure that some of the money goes not just to acquisition, but to maintenance of the properties. So it's really a program that's been extremely effective. It's been a model that's been used around the country. So we have a legacy of leadership, a legacy that was recognized in the most recent referendum, whereas it's been stated repeatedly tonight, where over 75% of the voters approved continuing the referendum. We're just getting back up to funding. And I'd point out that not many politicians can claim to have achieved a 75% approval rating in a vote for their position. I'm not just talking about council, but I'm talking about statewide. You know, and if you look at the demographics behind the referenda, East Side supports, West Side supports, Democrats, Republicans, developers, environmentalists. So it really has been a well-supported project countywide. Something I noticed this week was that the state is finally getting geared back up to buy environmentally sensitive lands. There are a couple big projects, one up by Tallahassee, another one over in the Gulf Coast area. So now is really the time to make sure that we do maximize the reserves that we have, because as everybody's seen, development pressure is just, it's coming. And if we don't act now, it may be too late. Plus the land prices continue to go up. So listen to the positive, listen to the voters, and let's continue this legacy by maximizing the funding that's available and keep those reserves up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cynthia
Yes, Qualwasser.
Qualwasser.
And one of the definitions of that is spring water.
Oh,
My life
wonderful.
would be easier.
This is appropriate.
if we did that. Anyway, good evening, all of you. I am, as I said, Cynthia Qualwasser from DeLand. I strongly support maintaining the full millage rate, especially for Volusia Forever. I'd like to remind all of you that the council has previously committed $20 million in matching funds from Volusia Forever for the USDA RCPP grant. I ask you, how will you raise that $20 million in funding if you cut the millage rate? Furthermore, your staff has also recommended you support the maximum millage rate. Volusia Forever passed with 75.6% of votes cast in 2020. Please honor the wide support this allocation has from Volusia County constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's the end of our public participation. We'll move to council discussion. Councilman Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and council members, I'd like to just talk a little bit more about Volusia Forever. I know we've had some dialogue in the past. If we can get our finance team up here, and probably Brad, if I may, Mr. Chair. I want to get down to some of the meat and potatoes here on this. There he is. Can you address one of the folks that came up and spoke about the $20 million? If you recall, we did we passed a resolution, I believe, that allowed us to tap into some matching funds. Brad may want to talk about that part, sorry. That we would tap into some matching funds. Can you recap that for me?
Yes, sir. So this is just, as you know, the approach in our program is to align funding partners to stretch local taxpayer dollars. So the USDA, since the program was reauthorized in 2020, USDA has established a new program called the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. What it does is it essentially invests in local conservation programs that serve a local need. So the $20 million commitment will allow us to bring federal cash down in order to use as 50% match on our agricultural projects.
So we're projected to get 30 million total, 10 million from them? Is that's the projection?
It will vary. About 15 is what our calculation was at when we submitted the grant.
From the feds?
Yes.
So that would, including our funds, that would be 35 million.
That's
Is that correct?
correct.
What do we have in projects dedicated that are already in place to purchase, and do we have the funding for it?
So right now we have 18 projects on the council-approved list representing 11,000 acres. If you do the math using local numbers, so in our world, we buy conservation easements where the property is maintained in a private ownership, and fee simple, which becomes public ownership. So you pay less for conservation easements than you do in fee simple. So of the projects that we have here using local numbers and costs per acre, I want to caveat this when I share it or qualify it. And the state's numbers for their ag easements and conservation easements and fee simple, we're looking at about $27 million to purchase what's on the A list right now.
How much do we have?
How much do we have in reserves for acquisition? About $5 million. 5.5.
And so if, let me ask you another question now. I'll wait for him to come up, Mr. Chair. If we did go to rollback, could those projects still continue on the plan? Because I'm assuming there was no expectation what the tax roll was going to be when we put these projects on the board.
Sorry, can you ask your question again?
If we do go to rollback on Volusia Forever, could your plans continue as they were when we put these 18 projects on the books?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how much do we have in reserves? You said 5 million?
I'll leave the budget numbers
Okay,
to the
thank
budget
you.
guys.
The current year's budget that you're in, not the one you're discussing today, as a factual number, the reserves were adopted at 10.4 million. The proposed budget for land acquisition is 15.9 million. There is no budget for the way that we budget for the Volusia Forever Fund. There is no budget for land purchases. It's all in reserves until projects are actually identified and then it's transferred from reserves to actually purchase land.
Understand. And you said there would be an additional, as the budget is proposed, it would add 5 million to it. Does that understand you correctly?
5.5 million.
And if it goes to rollback, what would it add?
900,000 less, so 4.6 million.
4.6 million at rollback. Okay. Still pretty healthy. Okay. Mr. Chair, thank you for your answers. You know, I appreciate everybody's comments up here that came and spoke today. I love the program. Let me first say that. I think it's a great program. We've created a model for the state to follow. I also I understand the fact that 75%, we're reminded, often voted in favor of this. I also remember the key word in that language was up to. Words have meanings, folks. This is up to, right? They gave us the latitude to govern and make that decision where we want that number to be. That's here. And that's the things that we weigh. The other thing I want to point out is that, I hope my dates are right, but when the public voted on that, they didn't have the sentiment that is here today with the cost of living. Inflation over the last probably 12 months or 6 months has just skyrocketed. So everybody is now starting, not everybody, I hate to use those words, but many people are starting to look at, how do I afford to live? Right? Everything is costing more. Milk is costing more. Eggs are costing more. And now we're going to tell them to more. I respect the organized effort that came out here. I've been in the process long enough to know that organized efforts are really very well organized. But I also am charged with looking for the person that is out there working as a waitress, working at Walmart right now at this time that cannot afford to come to these meetings because they're just continuing to work. So why $5 may not mean much to me, to probably all of us, our financials got out there, right? And many that spoke in this room, $5 a month could mean a lot to someone else. So we have to take that into account. Decisions can't be born out of who spoke in front of us as council. We take that and we weigh it against all of the other factors that we have to consider. And I think the factors that we need to consider is how and when can we give people relief in taxes. We did some good moves already recently, but many of my colleagues have talked, this is a healthy fund. If we go rollback, they collect $4.6 million versus 5.1, whatever it might be. Doesn't hurt the program. No one here has said that we want to alter the program. We were all very supportive of the matching $20 million and what we can bring down on that. So I think if that, I shouldn't bet on this, but if given that question again, maybe to the public today, I don't know if we could say 75% would go there. It might still pass the threshold, right, to continue to reauthorize it. But people are struggling. Y'all may not be. I can't speak for everyone out there, but there are a lot of people out there that are struggling. And I think we have to be responsible to give relief when we can, when we have so many millions of dollars in the fund. If we went to rollback, it will not hurt the program. It does not send a message to the people, the 75% that voted for it, that we don't care about preserving lands. We do. We've done a lot up here. But it also sends a message that we can do that and we can give tax relief when we can. And I believe the fund is healthy and we ought to go to rollback on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Dempsey.
First of all, I got to say, Dennis Bear, he used to be my boss when I worked for the state attorney's office under John Tanner back in the 1900s. And I got to tell you, I guess you may or may not know this, but he was probably one of the most vicious prosecutors for environmental crimes that I've ever seen. I guess back then we actually had an environmental crime unit, and Dennis was it. And I mean, he was vicious when it came to people polluting, and I'll never forget that. And it's just kind of freaking me out seeing you here today after about 20-some years. But yeah, he's still fighting for our environment, so I think that's awesome. But I'm not in favor of the rollback. I'm okay with the 0.20. My biggest concern about this whole program is if we're getting our biggest bang for the buck. That's always been my concern. I've talked to Dr. Burbaugh about it and what we can do to maybe get more money, get more for less money. And my concern is that, my hope would be that we're more willing to just walk away from potential sellers, that if their price is just too high, that we can learn to say, no, that's too much, and we'll pass and go on to the next project or purchase. Because, I mean, whether we roll back 0.02% and save $900,000, I think we could do much better by learning to just say no and hold out for the lower amounts. I don't know what the negotiating process is, but I would hope in the future, that we would maybe have more guts and fortitude to just walk away from some of these sellers and just not maybe pay as much. Go ahead, Brad. I'm sorry. Yeah, please respond to that, because I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just saying I would just like to be a little bit tougher and maybe go on to the next sellers.
Yes, sir. So I hear you loud and clear, but just understand the process. We as many other acquisition agencies in the state, have a conversation with property owners up front before we even order appraisals to talk about expectations. So you have 3 on this list right now that are grayed out. I didn't put any prices as in terms because, and my note is basically the ask by the property owner is unreasonable. So we won't even move forward to use money on appraisals if they're asking for something that's over what we know it will appraise at.
And again, I don't know where it lies within the staff or at what part of the negotiations it lies, but once, I know you identify the property, but I don't know who actually negotiates the contract price, but whoever that person is within this bureaucracy, if we could just maybe just be a little tougher in our we might be very tough in our negotiations, but if we could even push it some more just to save money, as opposed the increase or the 2.0 millage is not as concerning to me as just trying to get more for less.
We have a detailed negotiation plan for each property. I'd be happy to share it with you, talk about how aggressive we are in our first offer.
Okay, great. Thank you. And if we could seek out more partnerships with municipalities to get them to kind of kick in some of their money for a lot of these as well. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, somebody just disappeared.
That was me, sir. I was going to make a motion, but it sounds like there's more questions.
Just a couple. Great questions, Don. Beautiful answer. That was one of my concerns in 2020. And all of those concerns have been answered over the last 2 years with the changes to the program, with you being appointed to oversee it, with the multiple appraisals that we have to get. And to hear you say that sometimes we don't even get an appraisal because the asking price is too high is what needs to happen. Because that's what I saw happen in the past. Infrequently, but it did happen that we'd get a property and it was $500,000. By the time we bought it, it was $1.5 million. And that'll, you don't have to respond to that. That was way before you. And I think we've made the changes that we need. My fear is that if we cut, David is exactly right. The law said up to 0.2. This is perfectly legal, what he's asking us to do, and it's perfectly honest, because the law said up to 0.2. I don't think that this is the time to reduce it. I think the expense for us is if we don't buy the land that's necessary, and then we're trying to clean the water, restore our quality of life because of overcrowding, overdevelopment, whatever you want to call it. I think this is an equitable way to attack that problem. And I don't know about anybody else on the council because we're not allowed to share information, but I have got dozens and dozens and dozens of emails asking us to not cut this rate. I've received 2. Actually, I didn't receive 2 emails. I've received 2 messages on Facebook telling me, get rid of it. And that's by people who didn't vote for the program to begin with. This is a year where people need tax relief. David is also correct about that. I don't think that reducing Volusia Forever is the way to reduce the tax burden right now. I think the cost, if we don't follow through, is far higher than this. Matt Reinhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Santiago, I appreciate what you said. I do respect it. I respect you entirely, but I can't. I agree. You make a decision based on the outcome of people that show up at a meeting, but it goes beyond that. I travel to many events all over the county. John John, yeah, I see you all over the place. And I have yet to hear one person say go to rollback. And I have received numerous emails as well. And one of the things that I put that make my decision was the effectiveness of Dr. Burball and how he manages that. And I have every confidence in the world. We say, let our staff do this, and he's doing it. And so therefore, I'm not in favor of rolling it back. But I just want to go on the record as that. Thank you.
Councilman Johansson.
So moved up for a second final hearing to adopt proposed millage rates and proposed budget for fiscal year 23-24.
So I have to read the rates.
Well, then read the rates.
Or read the rates.
And then let me keep my time, Chairman, point of order.
Okay. You want the point of order right now?
Yes, I'd like to clarify something.
Good point.
We made an agreement to take items in a ask questions, motion second, then have discussion. Most of us here in the first thing have asked one question in about 4.5 minutes of how I got there, and 2 people didn't. So I'm asking the chair to please limit the first round to questions so we can get to Aaron reading, get to the motion the second, so we can have discussion in proper order. Thank you.
Okay. I'm guilty. I did it, and you just compounded the time that I took.
But I thought it was important.
We have 3 other people that want to speak. Do you have questions or?
I got a brief comment.
Okay. No more questions? Okay, then we'll move to comments, and then we'll go to your motion, Jake. David Santiago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Jake, thank you for bringing it up, because it keeps us all in line, and today I was guilty of it also. But to my colleagues, I just wanted to add that you heard from staff that going to rollback on it doesn't affect the program. It doesn't. Right? He said that he can continue what he has planned on the 18 projects. I asked a question. Well, there's a lot of chatter. Come back up. Where did Brad go? Maybe I heard it wrong.
Reluctantly, he comes back up.
So, Brad, I think I asked you if we went to the rollback and had around $1 million less, approximately, would it affect the 18 projects that you have on the books? I think you said no.
They would remain on the list until we had the money to acquire them, if we didn't have the money in reserves to buy them.
So it would have the effect of delaying, potentially.
All right, thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for the audience participation. I just feel that there are a lot of people suffering. I'm going to put my notes against on the book, and it wouldn't affect the program. And we all talked about reserves. We had too much. We all talked about cutting taxes. Danny, I think you said when it comes time, the rubber meets the road, right? Where do the decisions come? Where do we step up and make those tough decisions? Here we are today. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but you did say that. I did. I love you, man. I still do. Don't get me wrong. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Kent.
Thank you, Chairman. So first, let me just a couple comments for Councilman Santiago, and thank you for your leadership, because one of the things that ran through my head when you were talking was there are people, a lot of people, that are hurting financially in our community. You know, Volusia County is not known as a rich county. We have a lot of people who struggle financially, and you mentioned it. The cost of everything has gone up. Inflation was 9.06% this past year. You know, the car insurance for my family, what we're seeing for an increase is just absolutely outrageous and unfounded for the reason behind it. And it is our job to offer financial relief to our residents and to be the leaders in that. And if not now, when? If not us, who? So I applaud your leadership in bringing that forward. I questioned this 2 weeks ago because of the 10% increase, if my memory's right, on both of those.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Johansson?
this is the question.
No,
period,
this is
correct?
the discussion. We've moved to discussion.
We've moved to discussion.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Can I continue? Thank you. So, I apologize, the interruption threw me off for a second here. I thought we were on discussion. I knew we were. So, that being said, it is our responsibility to make sure that we can offer the services that our residents expect from this county at the best possible price. And although I love where you're going with that, I am going to support the full millage on Volusia Forever and Echo. We've been in this 9 months, this council. This is our 9th month. And all of us, myself included, you know, we need to have those tough conversations with staff because nobody wants their budget cut. You know, the firefighters were here tonight, you know, thanking George and his staff. And I love that we have 3 on a truck now. We should have 3 on a truck. We need to make sure our residents are as safe as possible when a fire truck is called to assist them. There's a price associated with that extra person on the truck. And we want to have the best facilities and safe facilities. And we saw that $15 million, I believe, for Station 15. So all of those things come at a price. We just have to make sure that we are using your tax dollars wisely, efficiently, and certainly effectively. So I applaud where you're coming from. I thank you for bringing it forward. But I too have received enough phone calls, emails, stating why our bosses think we should fund this at the maximum allowable. And you know, as we all know, we don't have to. That's the max. But as my dad reminds me, you know, he'll say to me often, son, they're not making it any cheaper. You know, he's lived on the beach side the entire time he's been here. And he says, you know, if I'm living in Florida, I'm walking to the beach because I'm not, you know, they're not making it any cheaper, and there's none that's new being made. Unless you're on the big island of Hawaii and the volcano is still creating land, which we're not. I'm trying to keep it in the U.S., but yeah. So that's why I am going to support the millage rate that staff is proposing for Echo and Volusia Forever.
Thank you. Jake, before I call on you, I understand, I will do make a concerted effort to make sure everybody understands when we're in questions, when we're in discussion. Jake Johansson.
Appreciate it. We've all seen increases in costs in our groceries, our gas, roofs, construction, and all that. Our government and our staff has also felt those increases, as well as our cities. Our council has responded to items and has questioned during the year, or 7 months, 8 months that we've been together, questioned programs that we're not happy with funding and cut them, or said we will no longer do them, thus doing our job to make this next year's budget as lean as we can. And I'm sure there will be more as the year goes on. All these cuts have been consequential. They may have not been millions of dollars, but they have been consequential. We've benefited from government ARPA money that made things look pretty good the past 2 years, and poof, that money's not here anymore. And when I'm out in town, from Astor down to near Mims, the most complaints I hear from people are about roads, traffic, and services. So for me, cutting any tax that would fund those things is a non-starter. I think getting down to an effective and efficient, fiscally conservative budget is something we have worked on throughout the year. We will continue to do so. One of our goals that we set at our goal-setting meeting a couple months ago was to increase efficiency and effectiveness. I saw our auditor out there earlier who brings us maybe once every 6 weeks an update on what he's doing and how much money he's saved, or cost avoidance. Because we caught this, it's not going to cost us X, Y, or Z. I do appreciate that. Keep up the good work. But we are saving money every chance we get, and every project he decides to audit comes back with something good. So we'll keep that up. I think it's extremely important. Forever and Echo, somebody mentioned earlier that there's some contributor cities. I live in Port Orange. We consider ourselves a contributor city. But I'll tell you what, I've been to a lot of county Echo-funded places, and I've been to a lot of Echo-funded places throughout the county. So I don't consider it what's my city getting, what's the West Side getting. I'm a Volusia County resident. I go everywhere for that money, and I make sure I use it. If you're concerned about where your dollar's going, go to anything. Those Echo signs are about, 4 feet by 20 feet? You can't miss them. Oh, there's an Echo place. Go visit. So, and forever, I'm kind of on board with going the full route here, just because we need money to give those easements and get that property conserved and preserved. But it's not the government's job either to buy up the entire county. I want everybody to realize that. We have some things on an A list. We have some things on a B list. We have some willing sellers. We have some unwilling sellers. So we can't force people to sell their property for the heck of it. So we'll continue to do that. But I think going a rollback wouldn't hurt us too bad. But I don't think that it's the year for it for me either. Thank you.
Vice Chair Danny Robbins.
I was close, Jake. In time. I was about to get you. I don't know what our total number is for people in Volusia County or voters, but I know we have 600,000-700,000, and this isn't a matter of how many people show up in our meetings or a matter of how many people send in emails. I don't make my decisions based on that, to be honest with you. I make it based on facts. And the fact of the matter is 70-some-odd% of the voting public voted for this. In my eyes, that's the majority. The majority was good with it. I see Mr. Santiago's point with it, but in this case, with that being said, 75% of the majority is good with this, and so am I. I'll support it.
Councilman Don Dempsey.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add is, it really hasn't come up, is not only are we talking about the 2%, because I agree with David, we got to be pretty conservative with our spending. And the only thing is, what we're not even talking about is every time we do make an Echo purchase, that's one more piece of property that's off the tax roll. So not only are we spending, the millage, but we also are losing a revenue-producing piece of property. So we just, I'm in favor of the, leaving it the way it is, but I'm hoping that maybe we can be willing to walk away from some deals, maybe have a bigger build up or a reserve next time, and we can talk about rollback in a year or two. I don't think we should have the mindset that we just have to spend it just to spend it. I think we need to spend it responsibly and take all that into consideration. And then next year, like Jake said, maybe this year I don't want to roll back, but maybe next year it should be a discussion depending on how much we got in reserves. But for now, I'm okay with leaving it where it is. Thanks.
Councilman Santiago.
I want Jake to beat up on me here, because this will be brief. You know, I'm sitting here contemplating because where I'm going to vote on the budget. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm really struggling right now. More for principle than anything. And I respect all of you all, right? But I feel compelled to share what my thoughts are. And it's out of full respect out of all of you. You know, we've talked a lot up here about different things, and particularly reserves across many funds, and this one. We've talked in the past about other projects where we felt, I think every one of us nodded, we needed to cut a particular program because we felt that it wasn't money that needed to be spent at the time. And what happened, right? And I respect the public's input. I want to be very, very clear about that, right? But our job is more than just who comes into the room. Our job is much more than who organizes the best email campaign to communicate your position. Our job is also, as we're out in the community, we have to use our moral compass, right? To say, am I prepared to make tough decisions? And I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm just letting you know what's going through me in this process and where I'm going to vote on this budget. So there has to come times where we have to stake that moral principle, if we believe in it, that we have opportunities, in this particular case, to cut something and give some people relief that doesn't destroy the program. It gives them $1 million less of $10 million in reserves. Again, and I think we could pick other parts of the budget, right, to even do something similar. But there comes time when the rubber meets the road. And our talking points need to reflect in tough decisions that sometimes don't reflect well with an organized effort that comes out. So I don't know where I'm going to vote on this budget right now, because I was a yes, but I felt like something is gravitating me to make a statement. So we'll see where my vote lies at the end, but I wanted you, out of respect to all of you, to know what's going through me. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Kent.
Yes, so I just wanted to comment on something that Councilman Dempsey said, which was very wise, and that is, when we use that forever money in Volusia and we purchase the property, there's a second piece where we're taking it off of the tax rolls. And I by no means am trying to speak for, all of the people that approved that, but I think most of my constituent base are okay with that, because they're fed up with the growth, and they want a way to say, time out, stop. But I'll just caution everybody, if we purchased every vacant piece of land in Volusia County, all of it, and so no one else new could come in, your tax rates everywhere are going to go up, because every year health insurance goes up, gas goes up, food goes up, employees want a raise. And I'm a firm believer that growth truly doesn't pay for itself. It doesn't. And it's on our backs. But if there's zero growth, you're really going to see increases. But I just share that it was a very valid, smart point that you brought up. But I am of the belief that many of our voters want us to purchase as much environmentally sensitive land so that places like the Loop and future loops are truly there for future generations to enjoy. So and Councilman Santiago, you are persuasive, because I won't speak for anybody else except for myself. I have pounded up here about being fiscally responsible. And if I thought that this budget was fiscally irresponsible, I wouldn't be voting for it. But at the same time, I want to give more to our residents. I want them to keep their dollars in their pockets instead of sending it to government. But here's my transition. Under your leadership, for our county residents, we just took $3 million out of our budget. And we did give some relief. I liked it because it helped our residents. The thing I didn't like about it was it didn't help all of our county residents. I want something where everybody's going to get some relief, even if it's, you know, a small amount. I'd much rather it be a larger amount. But then we have to make the decision, as Councilman Johansson said, you know, he's not met anybody, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that wants us to cut money in the roads program or in leisure services. You know, they want that. But I am back to also our core responsibilities, which are public safety, water, roads. Those things have to. But then, what kind of community do you want to be? Do you want a community that honors the arts? You know, admires education? And you know, that's something that I'm proud of the record in Ormond Beach, and I'm really proud of the record in Volusia County. You know, you've heard me say it. It's a $1.2 billion animal. It's a lot of money. You know, across the state, over in I think it's Hillsborough, I think they're over $2 billion. They have a lot more people, but you know, it's a lot. It's a lot of money. So anywhere where we can shave some money, I think it's a good thing. And I don't know if this is going to help you agree with it, but we did give relief to county residents with the communication tax that we nixed. So that has helped me a little bit. Thank you.
Councilman Reinhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to go back and clarify something that I said, because I saw something tonight that I never see, and that was I was in the red. I never see that for me. So I was running out of time. You have seen it once? You pay way too much attention to it. Anyways.
Reinhardt, quite honestly, I want you to know so you feel better about it.
Yeah.
When that happened, they didn't reset your time. I'm being totally serious. You started with 2 minutes and something, just so you know.
We'll talk. He's running my time now. Anyways, with respect to answering emails or being at locations and seeing individuals, and that is true, I never make that decision based on that as well. I wait to hear from everyone else. I have been known to been swayed one way or another based on what you said, Mr. Santiago, based on what Mr. Kent said, definitely what Mr. Dempsey said. So, no, you've done well. No, I give you all the credit. But what I'm saying is, I'm losing my train of thought. With what Mr. Robbins had said, with the percentage of individuals that voted for this program. And that speaks volumes. Forget the emails. Forget I even said that then. Forget the fact that I went to a dozen places last week. My wife will tell you it's more. That people have spoke out, and not one in opposition. That's what I'm getting at. Not one person, not one email, not one person, not one phone call has been in opposition to it. And the amount, and that factored in with the amount of people that voted for this or in favor of this. That's why I'm making the decision I am. So I didn't want to say that, I didn't want to be misunderstood. There's that misinformation. And I want to be known for, you brought it up just a second ago, I want to be known for more than Bike Week, NASCAR, and the Echo does a great job with giving people the opportunity to see more of those cool places. So anyways, I just want to clear the air. Thank you.
Just real quick, I want to clarify with the three of you down there. If we buy something for fee simple, it comes off the tax roll. If we provide a conservation easement and the owner gets to continue to work his property to graze it, grow fruit trees or whatever, does he pay any taxes?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
One of the things that you will see, Mr. Dempsey, that we've implemented when we bring the A list of properties, we provide next to the acreage their ad valorem assessment for that year, so council knows and the public knows if we buy this property and take it off the public rolls, that's how much you would be reducing taxes. So it's full transparency.
It is a good point that somebody said down here, we can't buy every property in Volusia, and we certainly can't. But a lot of this land that we're talking about in Volusia Forever, a lot of the property that comes to us and that they go after, there's wetlands on them. It's some of the most important property in Volusia County to conserve for our quality of life, for the quality of water that we drink, that we bathe in. We've got 4 rivers on the impaired waterways list that are also on the outstanding waterway list. We can't have an outstanding waterway in Volusia County that's impaired, in my opinion. This is a inexpensive way to protect those lands and to help them to recover. So with that, Vice Chair Danny Robbins.
I'll try to make this quick. David, Mr. Santiago, we had a chance to cut arts and, or excuse me, cultural arts for 700,000. I forget what it was. I think all of us voted for it. Amongst other things that we voted to keep, if what we're looking at trying to do is save $5 a month, where else can we cut? I'll work with you. Where else can we cut?
That's a question. I was only prepared for that one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think everything else was fine. I mean, we did do a cut. We did the $3 million one, as Jake said, and I appreciated your support on that. And what I was doing was I gave a summary of what I think I seen up here in the dais, right? Of all of our talking points and comments. That was it. And I think there was a comment saying that here it is. Put your whatever, swing that, whatever, I forgot the term that you always.
Sling that pistol.
Yeah. So I slung that pistol, and that was the challenge, right? But that's okay. It's okay. You win some, you lose some.
Yeah, and you know what, Mr. Santiago, I've encountered the same thing over the last 9 months. Some of the stuff I got the beat down on, but it's okay. The only hang up that I had, if there wasn't that overwhelming majority in this, and I agree with you on the principal side, but when we have something like this, if it was 51-49, you know, a little different case and go either way. But I just don't see it here, and to save $5. I mean, we had plenty of opportunities to do some other things which we didn't do, and our agenda hasn't changed. But I'm ready to move forward.